I am Lawrence Chuno, and this is Doing Jazz. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Jazz. My name is Lawrence Chuno, and this episode is with saxophonist and composer Mike Lee. In addition to being a prolific performer, Mike Lee is an avid educator who teaches in the formal education setting of colleges and universities, as well as in community engagement projects such as the Jazz House for Kids. As a composer, Mike Lee's music draws from an eclectic mixture of inspirations, and yet still rooted in the jazz tradition. This quality can easily be felt on his latest album, Song for All of Us. The song playing in the background is the title track of the album. During my conversation with Mike Lee, you'll hear the songs Maywood, Last Minute, and It's Easy to Remember. Towards the end of the conversation, you'll hear the song Shortstops. These songs are all from Mike Lee's new album, Song for All of Us. After listening to this episode, you can learn more about Mike Lee by going to the website of the show, www.doingjazz.net. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. The handle is @doingjazz. And you can listen to more episodes of Doing Jazz by subscribing to iTunes, Spotify, or any of the available podcast vendors. If you're on Spotify, please follow the Doing Jazz playlist, a one-stop playlist for songs by all the Doing Jazz guests so far. While on iTunes, please rate the show, leave a comment, and share the show with your loved ones. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I present Mike Lee. In your face. Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, check 1, 2.
All right, we're rolling. Mike Lee, welcome to Doing Jazz.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good. So I want to continue where we left off of the podcast, where you were telling me about what's it called?
Jazz House Kids.
Jazz House Kids. Yeah. I want to learn more about that, and I want people to also learn more about that.
Well, Jazz House Kids is an organization that was founded by Melissa Walker.
Okay.
A wonderful singer, entrepreneur. She is also married to Christian McBride.
Okay. The bassist.
The bassist.
Yeah.
And he's our artistic director, and she's our executive director. And about 9 or 10 years ago, I started working with her doing an in-house training program. So we started with one class, had about 9 students in it, 12 students maybe. And it grew very quickly. And now it's a major organization that has hundreds of students that we see every week, both in-house in the program that I'm involved with, and outreach and going into public schools, charter schools, private schools, and doing workshops for them. So this is the time of year, as I was explaining, that we're finding out about all our students that got into Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, New England Conservatory, and all these things.
So most students who come to the organization, to the Jazz House for Kids, they intend to pursue music as a career.
No, I wouldn't say most of them. Most of them don't, but are very strong. Our strongest students are among the best in the country, and routinely get national awards and placements in national bands like the Next Generation Orchestra and stuff like that.
And this is in New Jersey, right?
Right, it's in Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay. Nice, yeah. I wanted to learn a little bit more about your teaching, but I feel like this is important for people to know about.
It is,
what's going on.
we're here today talking about my new CD
Yeah.
and my performing career, but I think it's a mistake to separate them
Yeah.
because we're trying to bring a message. We're trying to bring a message of this beautiful music. And there's, hopefully I can convey that through my horn, through my writing, through my production and my direction on the bandstand. But I'm also just as facile teaching it one-to-one or in a group setting or in a masterclass setting. And I think all of that contributes to the overall message of love, peace,
Yeah.
working together, kind of exalting this beautiful Black American music that we play.
Nice. Let's talk about beautiful music. Your album.
Thank you.
It's called A Song for All of Us.
Yes.
Okay. I've listened to it over and over again. I try to listen to any album I talk about at least twice or three times. And what I can say is that it's very true to tradition. And then at the same time, the compositions are very eclectic. Like it speaks to me. Let's talk about it. Is there a theme? Is there a deliberate theme for the album?
Well, it's interesting because it had been so long since I'd recorded a CD under my own name. I'd done a few, even it's been a long time since I even co-led a band. But this is the first one under my own name for quite a while. So there were a lot of compositions that were kind of in the folder already that were old, that were not written specifically for this situation. But there were several that were written just recently. And the overall theme, I think, of the title track, "A Song for All of Us," is a message of togetherness. And it was written in November of 2016, right after the election. And it felt to me like a very chaotic time and a very divisive time in our country. And I wanted to write something that, included everyone. I mean, I have strong political beliefs. I have strong feelings about togetherness and expressions of love. But I think that when we write music, we can't aim it for our side of the aisle, so to speak. That we need to embrace everyone and include everyone in the message that we're sending.
Nice. I want to talk about the musicians. Who do you have on the album?
Well, this album has several different configurations, but the core band is the trio, and it features the great Ed Howard, bassist, who's known for his work with Clifford Jordan and with Roy Haynes and many, many other jazz luminaries. And also the great drum icon, genius musician Lenny White. And that we had done several gigs together as a trio.
Okay.
And that was kind of the hey, we should record this. And then as I started to bring in compositions, I was thinking, well, we probably need to...
So as a trio, no pianist. You didn't have a pianist.
Right. Well, yeah, those gigs were done as a trio. I hosted for a long time, and I think that I found a new venue for it, but it's too early to talk about it. But for about 7 years, I had a weekly jam session in West Orange, New Jersey.
Okay.
And my friend Dave Stryker, the great guitarist, was the person that put that together. He found a spot for the jam session to be right after the closing of a great jazz club that had been in the area for about 10 years called Cecil's Jazz Club. And we needed a new venue, and Dave found that and set it up and put me in charge of it. And we did that for about, at two different venues for about 7 years. And that was really my introduction as a leader and band in a known quantity in that part of New Jersey, which is just across the river from New York City, and we have a lot of great jazz luminaries that live right in the neighborhood. And as we were talking about, Christian McBride and Ed Howard, Dave Stryker, Vic Juris, Bruce Williams, Myron Walden. The list goes on and on. There's so many. Oliver Lake, Billy Hart. So many people live in Montclair, West Orange, in that area. So it's a very strong cultural scene, but it's also a nice place to raise a family. It's a nice, it's out of the madness of New York City, but you're very close at the same time.
Uh, I was looking at the names of the songs on the album, and they have very catchy names. I don't know if they were all deliberate or they just came together like that. You have Nighttown, Maywood, Voyage, Java Love, Last Minute, Shortstop, all those. Um, is there a formula to naming your songs?
Not quite,
Not
because as I
quite.
mentioned, the songs were all written over
Over a period
an
of
8
time.
to
Okay.
10 year period. So there were, depending on where I was at that point. The more recent composition, "Song for All of Us,"
Yeah.
has a very clear message about
Okay.
our time. Maywood is one that was written around the same time, also written initially for the trio format.
Okay.
And that's another town in New Jersey, not too far from the area I was just speaking of.
Okay.
And that's where my great, wonderful friend, the brilliant drummer Alvester Garnett lives.
Yeah.
So I was written in anticipation of doing some music with Alvester, and so I named it after his
Okay.
town.
Let's talk about Maywood.
Okay.
That's one that I actually really dig. I have it kind of has this sort of call and response with
Pianist.
the pianist.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pianist. Like it was like unintentional, but it happened. And I like it. So that's one of the things I'm saying. I said that your compositions are like would I say effortlessly eclectic. It just borrows things from everything and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
still lives it in the jazz tradition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's typical of one side of my writing, which is very folk songish and just like
Yeah.
simple melodies. I'm hearing a melody and maybe I'll put complex harmonies with it. But the idea is to hear a song, a singable melody. And you also, when you talk about George Colligan, the pianist, that was my first time playing with him, was recording this record. He was the one person that I didn't have a long-standing relationship with
Yeah.
going into it. And he's so brilliant and so able to acclimate to the situation. Of course, he has a long-standing relationship with both Bruce Williams, the saxophonist that plays on, and Lenny White, that he fit right in and really just made everything make sense.
Nice. Another song, all the songs are beautiful, but these are the ones that are just in my head now. Last Minute. Last Minute, there's something that happened that it seems like it sounds like something that is common, but it's not common. There's this, I think towards the end, there was this solo you were soloing, and the guitarist was also soloing.
Yeah, Dave
you know.
Stryker. That's the
Yeah.
great Dave Stryker.
That takes careful organization. It just doesn't happen like that. I mean, it could be spontaneous, but it still takes being in attuned to what's going on. Do you want to talk about that song in particular?
Sure. I mean, that was written for a gig. That was probably about 5 years ago. I wrote that song, and it was written for a gig, and I just needed one more original tune, and so it came up at the last minute. And
Yeah.
I put that title on it. I never changed it. In terms of playing with Dave Stryker, I've looked up to Dave and known Dave since the 80s. We both moved to New York, and he was already making a real name for himself, playing with Stanley Turrentine, Freddie Hubbard, many other great musicians, and once we discovered we were both living in New Jersey about 15 years ago at Cecil's Jazz Club, we started running into each other and jamming together, and then working together a little bit. And he's, playing with him and off of him. I play frequently with his band. Actually, before I came here today, I was working out some of his music because we're performing tonight at Trumpets Jazz Club in Montclair, New Jersey. And he's, playing with him and off of him and playing on kind of eclectic grooves is something he specializes in. So I love creating with him. He's such a great listener and knows how to leave space and ask questions and answer questions, and we really have a great time playing together. It sounds like that came across.
Yeah, it came across. I like that. Yeah. And then you also took on the standard It Is Easy to Remember. Yeah.
That one we recorded as a trio. That's one we've played live many times.
Okay.
And I think my goal on that one was to really stay true to the song and let the lyrics be heard through it, even though we were playing it instrumentally.
Yeah.
And just sometimes people are very complimentary and very excited to learn I'm playing with people like Ed Howard and Lenny White. But to be honest, it's so easy. I mean, they'll take anything you play and make it so musical that there's a certain sense of not having to try. There's no trying. You just play, and what's there you play, and they take such good care of it and bring such great interest to it that you don't have to try to do too much.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit more about you.
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I need to edit this podcast now.
What do you hear?
I hear British / Australian.
Nothing of the sort.
Nothing of the sort. Okay, I'm sorry.
My mother was a great speaker of English.
Okay.
She spoke very clearly, and I've tried to emulate her. She has a great story. She actually lived in the Bronx, and when she was a child, when she was an immigrant from Germany. But that the Great Lakes region they say it's the least inflected form of English in the world. Most of our newscasters come from that area.
Okay.
But
have you ever been told this? Because I just assumed, and I was almost like 100% sure of where your accent is from. I mean, that's so wrong of me, and that's so
right.
that's like would I say an undiscovered form of stereotyping that I just I just did.
It sounds like a compliment to me, so I'm not going to get.
Have you ever been told that before?
Not once or twice.
Once or twice. Okay.
And maybe because I know I'm speaking into a microphone, I'm being more careful about my diction. So
interesting.
So maybe normally I speak with less of that sound.
Anyway, let's talk about Cleveland. You're from Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
Yeah, good. I lived in Pittsburgh for 14 years, so we have this rivalry.
Just an hour and 15 minutes away.
Yeah. Did you grow up in a musical household?
Well, yes and no. I didn't. There were no musicians per se, but I had two older sisters who loved to sing around the house, and they loved to blast music. So there's all kinds of music playing throughout. And my father was a big musical enthusiast, and he played piano very poorly. But every Sunday afternoon, very, very enthusiastically, he'd sit at the piano and stumble through standard tunes and
like jazz standards.
Tunes that have been used as jazz standards, but he wasn't playing them in a jazz style necessarily. He was reading the sheet music of Lorens and Hart, and he had a lot of great music that he was trying to play. But I think it was his enthusiasm for it and exposure and it was. They were very much into me having lessons on piano or guitar or whatever I was into at the time. And so there was a lot of music in the house.
Okay. And did you know that you were going to be a musician when you were a kid? Like before college or before high school?
I mean, I'd say it was probably around 14, 15 that I got very passionate about it, and I was into music, and I had a couple other interests, and it was around that time that I realized I had a side of me that I love to do things alone and work out things at home. So I loved to write, and I was a photographer. I had a dark room, and I was into that. But the music had that because you can practice for hours on your own. Yeah. But it also had a performance aspect to it. It was social. You're out in front of people, and I found that I enjoyed that very much too, and the balance of the two, and having to work hard at something and then present it. And I became very passionate about it around
present
15.
it, and I feel like music is also more accessible from the audience, from the consumer's perspective.
I think so. I mean, it's more accessible in groups. You're not all going to sit down and read together. You don't. I mean,
maybe easily accessible.
Yeah, I think
with the right term.
It's more of a party.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah. Okay. When did you start playing the saxophone?
I think I was about 12 years old. Okay. It was in 7th grade in junior high school.
Okay. And you've continued to play since then?
Yes. Yeah. I started getting lessons about a year later, and I had a teacher who was working on an improvisation method.
Okay.
And so he introduced me to the idea of improvisation, which I thought was amazing and still do. And, love to think about it and write about it and talk about it and do it and practice it every day of my life. So.
And you went to college?
I did. I went to several colleges, actually. I graduated early from high school so I could get into studying music full time, and I went locally to Cleveland State University.
Okay.
I transferred after a year to the University of Cincinnati, which had a conservatory that had a jazz degree. And back then, now many schools have jazz degree offerings, but back then there were very few. And so it was a nice in-state school that allowed me to study, and I came to New York and studied a little bit, and
so
I've been back.
Where did you come?
Well, I think for a semester I was at New York University at NYU.
Okay.
And then I think I transferred with NYU and did another semester. I don't recommend transferring. It's not a good way to accumulate credits.
You lose a lot by transferring.
Yeah, but it was amazing. I mean, I remember that I was put in a quintet. Our combo was a quintet, and the trumpet player was Dave Douglas. There were other really great musicians there. Mike Karn was another saxophonist at the time. He's now primarily playing bass, but he's one of the great bass players. So there was just being in New York and being in the Village was really more what my direction was. And
what was the reason for all the transfer?
I think each one probably had its own reason.
Okay.
But I think the latter ones were to come to New York, to have a reason to be in New York City. And I looked at, back then, Rutgers and William Patterson had, as they do now, had great jazz programs. But NYU was Washington Square, and that's where I wanted to be. And so I was really going to school at the Village Vanguard and at Sweet Basil and Lush Life and Knickerbocker and Bradley's and all the great clubs that were around then.
And did you end up graduating from NYU?
No, I didn't graduate until about 6 years ago.
Okay.
I was offered the position as adjunct saxophone professor at Montclair State.
Oh, okay.
And the gentleman asked me, where are your degrees from? And I said, I don't have any. He said, that might be an issue.
Yeah.
And I looked and I realized I could finish. So I actually finished from a state college in New Jersey that's online.
Okay.
It's called Thomas Edison State University. It was actually very challenging because to stay accredited, they assign a lot of writing.
Yeah.
And it was actually great because I need to take academics.
Yeah, because you've been in conservatory.
I had more music credits than I knew what to do with, but I needed academics. And so I took, things that I think are relevant to the music that we play. I took African American history. I took a course on the civil rights movement. I took a course about the Civil War. And, if I ever run my own jazz program, that's going to be required. I think it's just so important to understand who created the music that we play and the country that we live in and how it came to be that we're where we are now.
Nice. All right. I have this question for you. It's uniquely made for you. Your dad is a jazz. He's still alive, right? Is he?
No, my father.
He passed.
No, he passed away several years ago.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. He was a jazz enthusiast, right?
Yeah.
And there are a few people out there, a lot of people out there who like this music, and they are not musicians, but they understand enough to want to play, to try to play every now and then. But it can be frustrating when it's not your job. You've not taken time to really drilled yourself to be disciplined enough to play and enjoy it. What do you recommend for them? What's the one thing? Is there one thing they can do, like one piece of advice in terms of practice? How can they practice to be better and enjoy the music?
I would say spend some time playing with the recordings.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about play-alongs and backing tracks, and that's very, those are very nice things to have, and they're tools that we can use. The problem is now, especially with the computer age and the apps on your phone, we're getting to a place where you're playing with machines, you're playing with machine-generated grooves, and they're not even particularly good machine-generated grooves. And so we're thinking about notes and right notes and wrong notes, and we're kind of missing the feel, So people want to, you want to learn to play a song like "Speak No Evil" by Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you use "Speak No Evil," the original recording with Elvin Jones and Herbie Hancock? Why wouldn't you use that as your backing track? Just listen to that and play along with it. And I think that's where the joy comes from. It's the feel, and when you talk about the great drummers, when you talk about an Elvin Jones or a Tony Williams or Lenny White, you're talking about people who they're kind of griots, they're senseis, they're priests of high music and bringing joy by making sound. And I think as long as you're involved with that, that you can participate in the joy. Jazz music is not music specifically for jazz musicians. It's music for the people. And there's a certain, especially for the straight ahead style that I play, there's a certain exclusivity built into it that a lot of people decry and think is bad, and it has to be more accessible. And I think a lot of what people who say is correct. But I think it's also okay that there's a music that's not as widely consumed as other music. But to find the joy in it for me, is to go into the groove, is to find the underlying feeling. And as a saxophone player, that means how we articulate and the sounds we make. So if you're practicing with a play-along tape that's computer generated or just played by, some no-name musicians, that's fine. But why not play with the track where you're hearing how Wayne Shorter articulates and creates such incredible sound and rhythm? That, in other words, with limited time to practice, practice with the masters. Have the sound of the masters, because it all comes down to listening and participating in that level. And for those that go on and make it a full-time avocation and have the great fortune of playing with the best players in the world, it's a treat beyond description.
Yeah. How important is, nicely said, by the way, nicely said, thank you. How important is being fluent in reading?
Well, there's two ways to answer that question. As a professional, you mean? Or someone who's trying to...
someone who's just trying to play nice enough to go to a jam session.
Well, if what you want to do is go to a jam session,
local jam session.
Yeah, if you want to go local jam session, or or my jam session in New Jersey, reading is not required at all. If you know the songs and you know the chord progressions and you know the expected sequence of events, know how to participate in that. We don't really have written music out. We don't. I frown on that. I like for people to be able to hear and listen. As you heard in my music, there's a lot of interaction and playing off of one another, and I want to encourage that as much as possible. In terms of my career, there are certainly a lot of situations. I mean, if I'm playing in Jimmy Heath's big band, or I'm playing the Dizzy Gillespie big band, or I'm playing with Oliver Lake big band, I need to, I have a part too. I mean, my chances to solo are great too, but those gigs are, 95% about playing the section and playing well in the section and being able to read well enough that you can be free enough to listen to the musicians around and blend and do all the things that we need to do. So in terms of our career, doing what I do it's very important. I'm playing with Dave Stryker tonight. He's putting out 2 new records. We've got 2 sets of new music. I memorized some of it, but I can't memorize all of it, and I'm going to be looking at that music, and I'm going to want to execute it like I've been playing it for 20 years.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Where do you live now?
In Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair, New Jersey. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to conclude with a little game I call Turn Up Mute. It's just, I give you 2 options. You choose one and we get rid of the other.
Okay.
But there's a caveat. The caveat is that the one you choose, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the one you're going to choose tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're just choosing it for now. And when you leave here, you can switch to the other one or switch to somebody else. All right. Okay. So, 2 options. Sonny Rollins Wayne Shorter. You have to turn one up and you have to mute the other.
Oh, come on. That's like making me choose between my children.
Oh, yeah.
How
Sorry.
would you do that?
Yeah, it happens.
Right now, I'm probably listening to more Sonny Rollins,
Okay.
but tomorrow will be different.
Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
two of my absolute heroes. It's like, it's like trying to decide between two, of the most brilliant geniuses that play my instrument that ever walked the earth.
Yeah. I've been listening to Wayne Shorter's Etc. The album.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just rediscovering those songs. Like, the first time I listened to them, I was a kid. I didn't even know what was going on. But now I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
What's going on?
No, it's the gifts that'll just keep coming back, listen over and over. And when I say Sonny Rollins, is like, to me, the pinnacle of his career, to me, my favorite is Nuke's Time.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he and Philly Joe Jones play together is so brilliant. And it came on the radio the other day, and my son, who's a drummer, he's 17.
Mm-hmm.
He's been learning some of the Philly Joe Jones fours, where he trades his solo portions, and so we've been talking about it, and we were driving to a rehearsal, and it came on, and it's just amazing every time you listen to it. And I've listened to that probably in the thousands. It's got to be at least 1,000 times I've listened to that whole record, and there's things that I never noticed that before. I never heard that. There's like new stories that are being told. Etc. is another, just a masterpiece. And there's things that you'll always discover.
All right, 2 cities, Cleveland, Montclair, New Jersey. I think this might be an easy one.
I mean, I've chosen Montclair for a reason. But I will tell you this: that when my wife, who's also from Cleveland, we grew up in Cleveland Heights, which is a very close suburb to Cleveland, right up the hill.
Okay.
And we had been looking around, searching for a place, because we've been living in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And my oldest son was 3 years old, and we just wanted a place like we grew up, a house in the yard, and we were looking for something suburban. And someone said, you should check out Montclair. It's a very artistic community. And as soon as we drove in the city limits, we just the trees, the architecture, the style of houses, the makeup of the city, very diverse community, in terms of ethnically, financially, we have very wealthy areas. It was so much like Cleveland Heights that it kind of freaked us out. So when I say, just probably because it's closer to where I do most of my work in New York City, that I would choose Montclair. That's why we're there.
My brother lives in Cleveland now. He goes to Case Western Reserve.
Yes.
He's doing a PhD in chemistry. Yeah.
And Case Western Reserve is right on the edge of Cleveland, right abuts Cleveland Heights. So he's right in the area that I grew up, that I was, that all the, back when I was living there, the jazz clubs were in that. It's called the University Circle area. And it's, where Severance Hall is. And
how long is Euclid Avenue in Cleveland?
Oh, it's long.
Does it go through the whole of Cleveland?
Well, it goes from the center of Cleveland all the way to the east side and up into the suburbs.
I see.
Forever, all the way out, I think, until you get past what's even considered the suburbs. It's a very long street.
I see. Cool. The last one, 2 options. Be careful.
Okay.
Be careful here. Hey Luck, Shortstops. Now, these are 2 of your children.
Yeah, they are.
2 of your songs. They're both bebop-y, kind of. Shortstop is...
Yeah. Shortstop's a little bit more modern. That's the original composition. Hey Lock was written by Eddie Lockjaw Davis.
Okay.
I love playing Shortstops. That's that was...
Good choice. And it's your composition.
Yeah.
So. Good. Mike Lee, thank you for coming on Doing Jazz. I really enjoy this, and I'm sure my audience are going to enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome. We did it. Later.